the grand country estate of Terrahill, Yorkshire, England. You hate me, my sweet, sweet darling. You told me so this morning as Vera packed away your clothing. I stood in the room as you pleaded and begged for me not to do this, that it was unfair, that you'd be ruined if I were to send you away now. All when young Lord Crownbarrow was so close to proposing. What was in America, on Fifth Avenue, in Newport, in Millennium City that you could not find here? Oh, my sweetest girl. What you could find here is safety. Such safety across the grand ocean that I had once crossed as passionate and furious as you are now. You say you are being taken across the ocean against your will on the opposite way that I was going against mine when I was your age. And although you accuse me of being as horrible a mother as mine was, I strive not to stem at such comparisons. For you did not know the torments that your grandmamma had concocted for me, had done to me. No, I mustn't burden you with such things. With the darkness that lies in the bottomless pits of abyss within the hearts of those that abuse such absorbent power. But then, I pause to think. Perhaps I should warn you of such evil in people's hearts. Long have I tried to shield you and your brother and sister of such things of the world that exist, in every facet of this privileged society where you have been raised so gently. But I fear, as I watch you leave for Southampton with Jocelyn, our sweetest baby now grown, that I might have done too good a job of it. Perhaps I felt confident that I was not mistaken in sending you with your sister on tour with her ballet company, as long as you and Jocelyn were together, that it would all be fine. My beautiful girls would have one another. But perhaps this naive thought of defense in the riches that I was born have clouded my judgment once again, as it always has. I have always seen the darkness in one place, in the shadowed corner that I face, and never think of the one behind me, creeping, preying on my innocence, till it was all too late. When I was a girl, I only saw the evil in women, considered all of them horrid creatures filled with lies, low ambition and depraved cruelty. I thought of men as such valiant and strong paragons, which would protect me from these vile miscreants, trolled up in silk to cover their filthy, uttered teats. But I put too much stock in such things, in the pity of men. For when I turned around, they had all abandoned me. They had only come for my beauty, my grand fortune, and then left me when I offered none of it to them. Now, my darling, I sit in rooms filled with only shadows, as any mother must, but more so your own mother than most, I'm afraid. For all the things that I was so prized and doted on so fondly for in every ballroom in London, New York, Newport, and Millennium City, and those glorious days of opulence and youth were what has put you in so much danger. I don't know how to tell you this, but to say that the king is dead. Your grandfather, your real grandfather, is dead. And now that he is gone, Make no mistake, my sweetest girl. They're coming for you. When I first came to this country that my children now call home, I was no older than you, and certainly less intelligent, God be good. I had beauty, I had money, I had education, jewels and diamonds. Everything that I thought, that everyone thought in Millennium City had made me a princess. But what I didn't have was a title. In New York, despite all of these advantages, I was thwarted at every turn in the ballrooms and teas. I was halted at the very row house doors by every Knickerbocker matriarch with their cursed Dutch hubris. My silk dresses, my pearls, my money, even my considerable beauty. They had thought it all an abomination of excess. I could have any man in New York, any of their sons if I wished. So they shut me out. There was no room for new money in their New Amsterdam club. So what else was I to do? If they thought that I was a princess, then why not become one? Mother had raised me in such a way, and I thought I wished to stay in New York. To marry a man with such admirable ambitions and honor with wealth as Daddy, Mother had different plans. In her fantasy, there was not a man good enough for me but one with a title, with standing in the courts of European monarchy. I was born and raised for this life, for this position in a foreign society. The governess, the teachers, the instructors, since I could remember, I was taught how to be royalty, and was treated as such by everyone in my life. They read too many fairy tales, and they strived to turn me into those girls, or what they imagined they'd be like. And so I am, what they made me. I strove to become their ignorance. And I'm so sorry, my love. So sorry. It was in London, during the season when I met your uncle Nathaniel. You know the story, and you've seen his portrait. Tall, dark, dashing, and charismatic. I loved him from the moment I met him. It was all falling into Mother's plans, and for once I did not try to smother her machinations in its crib. I try not to think of Nathaniel in the way I did back then, for to relive such strong complexions of the heart, I feel that I'm lamenting your existence, and that of your younger brother and sisters, casting aside all the joy and purpose you've given me, which, you must understand, I surely don't. There is no use in hiding the fact that we've spent much of our lives in blissful happiness, if he had lived. For I know he loved me so. Loved me to the detriment of his own safety, to the very gust of Cupid's loose bowstring. Alas, it was not meant to be. I was naive to think at the time that it was all a freak accident. How tragic to think a cab driver could lose control of his team of horses. These things happen all the time in London, they say. Now, I'm not so sure. For I was so ignorant of the true wars being fought by dukes, counts, and their heirs for my favor, for my fortune. I only wonder now, when we attend summer luncheons with Lord and Lady Marlborough, and all the rest of the aristocracy, just which one of these smiling serpents was the one who had Nathaniel killed, and yet still settled for their dowdied milk baby next to them. these people you've been raised as peers of, you don't know what is behind their face, what is really behind their smile. All the teas and balls, and dinner parties, and being presented to court, it is all but a veneer to the ugliness that I am trying to protect you from. No, my darling, what I must protect you from. After Nathaniel, you of course know how I met your papa. But what I must admit, to my shame, is that I thought of him as a jail sentence. After your uncle's murder, I thought the hunt for a husband, a title, would continue. But instead, your grandfather, who was already in negotiations with Daddy from the entail, offered his younger son to me. A boy with glasses, nose stuck in a book, tinkering all day in his basement laboratory with his gadgets and inventions. The title, the grand country palace, and the standing in society, plus the wedding, already planned and bought for. It was all Mother could have ever wanted. I cried and begged for them not to make me marry your papa. But somehow, my mother always found a way to make me a slave to their will. Always. So it was. I went to the executioner's axe in my Worth wedding gown. It was a specially made gown that I had so happily preened in my mirror with only a month before. I was to marry a man who couldn't even get a sentence out in conversation with me. So shy, so bookish. Yet, to think of my own behavior that day, in front of all those people, all those years later, I am so shamed in memories that I sometimes feel I will vomit from the embarrassment during revelry. But sitting in the church that day was the catalyst for my own great mistake. Attending our special day was the future Prince of Wales. Your father. Your real father. On what I once thought to be the worst day of my life, he had been the only one who kept my spirits up, who made me laugh. While your papa so awkwardly took the compliments of taking such a prize of a wife, the prince danced with me, engaged me in deep conversation, and introduced me to all his good friends that made plans for my company. So soon after our wedding, your papa retreated back to his laboratory, afraid and ashamed as a Catholic schoolboy at even the littlest exposure of my naked flesh. He left me alone to a great and empty grand estate, with nothing but maids and footmen to keep me company in the long, lonely hours of provincial country life of a foreign land. It seemed that my only friend and confidant was my lady's maid, Mary Kelly. But then, the prince came back for me. The prince had come to entertain for dinner, and oh, how exciting he was, my darling. He was everything I thought I needed. Dancing, talking, laughing. After months alone in the grand house, I finally had a companion. He invited me to parties and balls, enchanted by my beauty and sense of humor. I was in love. But I realize now that it was never with the man, but with the life in him, with his ever pursuit of the simplest of joys. We shouldn't have done what we did in Consuelo's summer home. It wasn't right. not even by the loose morals of the aristocracy. But I thought I had to. I had to feel alive again after such bitter loneliness. It had been my only companion all my life. It was forbidden and wrong. But we indulged in such a fine romantic dalliance. It had been the first one in my life. And how it was so thrilling then, my darling. I was addicted. Not so much to my lover's touch, but to the sheer sensation of having a lover. With Mary Kelly as our broker and shield did we sneak around the lush and grand gardens of our hostess's estate. There we stole away private kisses in the hedge mazes, and the most intimate of the most romantic gestures by the fountain of Venus. I was a girl in love, and I had thought of that week as the best of my life. I was a princess who had finally found a real prince. But soon enough, I began to feel sick. I dare say I felt drained. That was when I knew you had arrived, my beautiful sapphire. I was scared, terrified at the prospect. No one knew of a royal bastard. I'm sure there were, but they weren't spoken of by anyone. I told the prince of you, begged him to make it right. But he only smiled, told me how perfectly wonderful it was that I was with child. I hinted, I suggested, and I tried to make him understand that you were his. But he'd only deflect, only congratulate, and told me that we must get together again. And with a smile, he walked out of our lives forever. As soon as he had left, I was summoned to the court by the prince's mother. I was afraid, my head swimming with all of the vengeful things that could have been visited upon by your grandmother. Was I to be beheaded, thrown into the dungeons? But no. Instead, she was kindly gracious to me. But in the end, she insisted that I hastily do away with my maid, Mary Kelly, the only witness to this affair. She promised that you would not go wanton for anything, my sweet girl. If only I kept you a secret, that word must never get to Her Majesty the Queen. And I obliged. That night I cried, for I was ruined. We were ruined. You and I were alone in a foreign country, with no one to aid us, no one to love us. I was forced to let go of Mary Kelly, and she begged me to reconsider. But how could I, when it was the future queen to give me an order? I told her that she was young, pretty, and full of life. She would not go jobless long. How little did I know. How friendless and alone, in the face of obliteration. I looked out my window at the roaring ocean below, and pondered so desperately of the marble balcony that I could leap off and be done with the horrible sins I have visited upon you, my love, on both of us. But that was the day that my husband became my best friend, became your loving papa, because he came to us, and in my hour of desperation, he apologized for abandoning me. I know not what might have come over him. Perhaps he had always been watching. Perhaps he knew of what had happened, felt in his bones what was in my mind, as I often looked out at the ocean in the balcony overlook. But whatever led him to this divine empathy, it saved my life. Saved our lives, Sterling. He had been in love with me so desperately since he first saw me, pining ever so hard for me. But he felt so guilty when his brother died. For even being a man of science, he felt that he brought on Nathaniel's death in his longing. But finding me in such desperation, he said that he would protect me no matter what. And that night, when we came together, we'd never part. From my lowest to my highest, you were born in a time that truly was the happiest time of my life. And all these years later, I think only with longing of those blissful days. Your papa fell in love with you from the very moment you were born, and with you in his arms, I fell even harder in love with him. There was nothing like those magical moments, and yet I was ignorant in our joyous celebration, because half a city away, on the dirty streets of Whitechapel, a vile creature with the blackest of souls, and by royal decree, was this monster hunting my former maid, Mary Kelly. Hunting for you, my girl. And after all these years, they'll be coming again. Lady Sarah Inglehart, Countess of Terra Hall, May 6th, 1910. This script was written by Matthew Y.